When I was young, I thought life was easy. My dad had money, so I did not worry. I did not study much, I did not work. I had everything I wanted. If I saw something nice, I asked my dad. He bought it for me. My friends told me to think about the future, but I laughed. Why should I work? Why should I worry? My dad had money. My dad had money, and that was enough for me. Every morning I got up late, ate a long breakfast in bed, and watched TV for hours. Sometimes I went out with friends. We visited the best restaurants, wore expensive clothes, and drove fast cars. Life was easy and fun. I thought it would stay that way forever. I never really thought about money. I never thought about work. If I wanted to travel, I just traveled. If I wanted new shoes, I bought them right away. If I wanted a new phone, I got the best one. My dad paid for everything. I never asked how hard he worked. I never asked about his job. I just enjoyed my life and lived in the moment. I never thought about tomorrow or saving for the future. One day my dad called me to him. He looked serious and I noticed it at once. He told me to sit down. "Son, we need to talk," he said. I smiled and said, "Yes, Dad." But his face did not change. He was not cheerful, made no jokes, and that made me a bit nervous. I did not know why. My dad was always kind to me, and almost never said no. But something was different that day. He took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eyes. "You are not a child anymore," he said firmly. "You must think about your future." I laughed and answered, "Dad, I already have everything I need." He shook his head. "No, my son. You have everything because I work hard. But life is not always easy. One day everything can change." I did not really understand him, and thought he worried for nothing. I smiled and said, "Don't worry, Dad. Nothing will change." He did not smile back. He looked at me for a long time, and I felt he truly cared. Then he said, "We will see." I had no idea what he meant. Maybe he was just in a bad mood. I stood up and left the room without thinking about his words. I wanted to see my friends. I laughed, spent money, and enjoyed the time, not seeing that the ease would not last forever. I had no idea my life would soon change a lot. The next morning, I again got up late, stretched, and grabbed my phone. There were many messages from my friends. They wanted to go out and have fun. I smiled and got ready quickly. I put on my best clothes, used expensive cologne, and felt great. But when I walked down the stairs, I saw my dad again in the living room. He was waiting for me, and his face was serious, which worried me at once. I could not help thinking that something important was happening. A strange feeling came over me when I saw his face. "Sit down," he said in a firm voice. I sighed and sat, feeling the pressure at once. "Dad, I have plans," I said with hope, but he did not care. He looked straight at me, and I felt his resolve. "You are not a boy anymore," he said strongly. "You must understand life." I rolled my eyes and felt uneasy. "Dad, I know life," I protested, but I was not sure. He shook his head. "No, you don't," he said, and then stood. Suddenly, he said something that surprised me. "Come with me." I followed him outside, unsure what moved him. He walked to the car, and I had no idea where we would go. He said nothing, and I sat beside him, confused and nervous. As he drove off, I noticed the city felt different that morning. I saw people walking fast, their faces serious and focused. I saw workers sweeping the streets and men selling food from carts. streets. I had never noticed such things before, but that day I saw them clearly. People looked busy, and every move seemed to have a purpose. After a while, my dad stopped the car. We were in a part of town I had never visited. The buildings were old and shabby, the streets were dirty, and the people looked tired and worn out. My dad pointed to a man selling fruit. "Look at him," he said. "He gets up early, works all day, and never rests. He does not complain. He works hard to feed his family." I said nothing. I had no words. Then my dad showed me a small shop. Inside, an old woman sat and sewed clothes. "She has worked for 40 years, he explained. "She has little money, but she works hard every day and never gives up." I looked at the woman. Her face was tired, but she did not stop. I had never really seen people like her. I had never thought about their lives or honored their struggles. My dad turned to me and asked, "Do you understand now? Life is not easy for everyone. Some people work hard every day without praise." Then he looked at me and said firmly, "But you, my son, have not worked even one day." A strange feeling came over me. I wanted to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I looked away. For the first time in my life, I felt small and fragile. I felt different, as if something had suddenly become clear. Something inside me had changed, and I could not ignore it. The reality of the people around me hit me like a punch. We got back into the car, and I knew my life would soon change. I knew I could not forget the lessons I learned that day. My dad said nothing. He just kept driving while I sat silent and thought. The pictures from the day stayed in my mind. I saw the man selling fruit. I saw the woman sewing clothes. I had never thought about people like them. I had never thought about work at all. My life had always been easy, but now I felt different. These thoughts ate at me, and I did not know why. After a while, Dad stopped again. We stood in front of a tall building. It was his office, and I had been there once. But I had never stayed long. I only came here when I needed money or wanted something. Dad got out of the car and said, "Come." I followed him inside, and I felt the busy mood at once. The office was very lively. People walked quickly back and forth, phones rang without pause, papers lay everywhere, and the noise was high. Dad led me into his office and sat down. He looked at me with a serious face. "Do you know what I do each day?" he asked. I shrugged and muttered, "You work." He nodded. "Yes. But do you also know how hard I really work?" I kept silent, not sure what to say. Then he went on. "I get up early, make big decisions, and solve problems. I care for this company, and I do it all for you." As I looked around, I noticed tired workers. Some wrote reports, others talked on the phone, and a few looked stressed. I had never thought about this before. I had only seen the money Dad gave me. I had never seen the effort behind that money. Inside me, I felt something new rise. Guilt. Then Dad handed me a small notebook. "Starting tomorrow, you will work here," he said. I laughed in disbelief. "I should work?" I asked, surprised. Dad did not smile. "Yes," he said in a firm voice. "You will start at the bottom. You will learn." I was shocked and could hardly believe his words. "But I don't need to work," I protested. Dad shook his head. "Yes, you do," he said. "One day I will be gone. What will you do then?" I did not know what to say. I had never thought of a life without my dad. The idea was scary. I had never thought about the future, only about my own comfort. But now I had no choice. Dad had decided, and I felt this moment would change my life. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow I would work for the first time, and maybe meet the hard truth of life. Suddenly I felt very small and fragile. What if I was not good enough? What if I failed? These questions spun in my head. My heart beat faster as I thought of the tasks ahead. Yet deep inside I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I would learn something. Maybe I would even feel proud of myself. But the fear stayed, and I kept thinking how much my life would change. The next morning I got up early. It felt strange because I used to sleep late, but now I had to work, and I was not sure I was ready. I got dressed and walked downstairs, where the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. My dad was already waiting for me. He handed me a small bag. "Your lunch," he said with a smile, and I felt a bit better. I looked at him in surprise. "Lunch? Can't I eat in a restaurant?" I asked, hoping for something warm. He shook his head and said, "Workers bring their own food. Today you are a worker." We left the house and drove to his office. When we arrived, he did not take me to his big office, but to a small room. Many desks stood there. People sat at their computers and worked with focus. A man walked toward us. He wore glasses and looked very serious. "This is Mr. William," my dad introduced him. "You will work under him." Then my dad left, and I suddenly felt alone and unsure. Mr. William looked at me. "Come with me," he said in a strict tone. He walked fast, and I followed him nervously. He gave me a chair and a small desk. "Check these papers," he explained, placing a big stack before me. "Look at the numbers. Find mistakes and mark them." I stared at the papers. There were many, far more than I had expected. "All of them?" I asked in fear, feeling pressure on my shoulders. Mr. William nodded. "Yes, and work fast." I sat down and began. At first it was easy. The numbers were clear and simple, but after an hour my head hurt. I saw I had to try hard to stay focused. The numbers blurred before my eyes, and I felt overwhelmed. In that moment I realized work needs much more than I had thought. It is not only reading numbers, you must be alert and precise. I had to find courage to continue and not lose heart. I took a deep breath and tried to focus, doing my best to find and fix errors. It was the start of a new challenge for me, and I wanted to prove myself. The numbers all looked the same. My eyes were tired, and I wanted to stop. But I could not. Everyone around me worked. No one rested. No one talked. This was not like my old life. It was different. It was work, and I felt I had to adapt to this new reality. By lunch break, I was completely exhausted. I opened my bag. The food was plain and nothing special. No pricey dishes, no fancy drinks, just a simple sandwich and a few snacks. I ate quietly and thought while I watched the room. I looked at the other workers. They ate fast and went right back to work. No long breaks, no laughter, only work and focus. I missed my old life. I missed my freedom and the ease of my former days. Yet I also felt something new inside. I felt respect for the people around me. These people worked hard every day, and now I was one of them. The afternoon was even harder. My back hurt from sitting so long. My hands were tired from constant writing, and I saw I had to push myself. I wanted to stop and go home, but I could not. Mr. William came to my desk and checked my work. "There are mistakes," he said. "Do it again." I sighed and wanted to protest, but I did not. I only nodded and started over, determined to do better. I knew I had to improve, even if it was hard. When the workday finally ended, I felt different. I was very tired, but something inside me had changed. I now understood better how hard people work. For the first time, I knew that money does not come easily. As I left the office, I saw my dad. He waited patiently for me, and I felt he was proud. He did not ask about my day. He just smiled. And for the first time, I smiled back. Not because life was easy, but because I had earned that smile. The next day I got up early again, but my body hurt. My hands were stiff, and I felt exhausted. I had never felt like this before. I wanted to stay in bed, but I could not. I had work to do, and I knew I now had duty. I got dressed and went downstairs. My dad was already at the table. He looked at me and nodded. "Good," he said. He said nothing else, but it felt different. It felt like he was proud of me, and that gave me strength. But I kept working. I did not stop. By noon, my task was done. Mr. William checked my work and found fewer mistakes than before. "Better," he said, just one word, but it felt great. It felt better than buying something expensive or wasting time with friends. It felt real, and I had never felt this before. In the past, I did not care about work, but now I did. During lunch, I sat with the other workers. The feeling of community was new to me. They talked about their families, their worries, and daily problems. They laughed and ate quickly before going back to work. I listened to them and saw that I had never thought about people like them before. I had never thought about what they face each day. But now I sat with them, and I felt accepted. Now I was one of them, part of their world, and that gave me a sense of belonging. The afternoon was hard. Mr. William gave me even more work. "Let's see if you can do this," he said with a challenging look. I wanted to complain, but I did not. I only nodded, focused, and kept working. The hours passed slowly. My back hurt, my hands ached, but I kept going. I wanted to prove I could do it, mainly to myself. The pressure was high, but I also felt a new drive inside. At the end of the day, Mr. William looked at me. He did not smile, but he said, "Not bad." Just 2 words, yet they meant a lot to me. I nodded and left the office. My dad waited outside. He looked at me and asked, "Tired?" I nodded, and a wave of pride filled me. He smiled. "Good," he said. In that moment, I understood everything. I grasped why he had sent me to work, and for the first time, I no longer wanted to run away from work. I wanted to learn more and grow. Days passed, then weeks, then months. I worked every day. At first, it was very hard. My body hurt, my head was tired, but slowly it got better. I made fewer mistakes and worked faster, and I began to feel proud of my progress. I noticed that I not only did my job, but also learned much about myself. I found new skills inside me that I never thought I could have. My confidence grew, and I felt stronger. The challenges I mastered made me more experienced and mature. I knew I was on the right path and ready to take charge of my future. Mr. Williams still did not smile, but he stopped complaining. Sometimes he even said, "Good job." Those words felt better than any gift I ever got. I began to understand money. Before, I just spent it without thinking. I bought things I did not need and never thought about hard work's value. Now I saw how hard it was to earn it. I watched my dad at work. I saw him make big choices, solve problems, and care for the company. He often worked long hours and had little time for himself. I had never respected his work before, but now I did. Dad was not just a man with money. He had built something with his own hands, and that amazed me. One evening, Dad called me into his office. He looked at me for a long time and said, "You have changed." I did not know what to say. He continued, "At first you were lazy, and work meant nothing to you, but now you understand." I nodded because he was right. I was not the same person anymore. I felt stronger and motivated. Then Dad surprised me by taking out a small key and giving it to me. "This is your office," he said. I was shocked and asked, "My office?" He nodded. He said, "You are ready for more duty. You have worked hard. Now take the next step." I held the key in my hand. It was small, but it felt heavy, because it was not just a key. It was trust, and that trust gave me new self-worth. The next day, I moved into my new office. It was small, but it was mine. I had my own desk, my own chair, and my own work. I was no longer just a worker. I was part of the company. I learned to take responsibility and treat it seriously. It was not easy, and I often made mistakes and had bad days. But I did not give up. I kept working and kept learning while I solved the problems that tested me. I saw that it could be joyful to beat challenges and grow. I wanted to be like Dad and build my own work, because I now knew hard work's value. I learned that every step I took mattered. When I look back today, I laugh at my old self. I once thought life was easy and money was a given, but I was wrong. Life is work, effort, and the drive to build with your own hands. My dad taught me this, and now I am ready for the future. Not just because I have money, but because I learned how to earn and value it. Thank you for reading this story. It shows me how vital it is to see real life and honor the hard work of many. We often live in a world where we focus on the good and do not see life's struggles. But meeting people who work hard has helped me see the truth about life. I hope this story also pushed you to think about your own experiences. Maybe you too have parents who taught you key lessons about duty and hard work, just like mine.